Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera's Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are following us on Facebook. We've been having some technical difficulties from time to time the last couple of weeks with Facebook. So if you're listening to us or viewing us on Facebook and you can't hear the sound or we look like we're in outer space, then we apologize for that. But we'll get it fixed and figure it out here in the next couple of days. We want to thank you again for following us. Appreciate that very much. We want to grow the audience as much as we can and continue to offer the information and education as we do to you, and that is our main focus and objective. However, this is a podcast, so we'd love to have you, if you haven't done so, download the podcast. You can do that you can go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google+, any place online, really. Just type in Real Estate Radio Live. You'll see the place where you can download the podcast, and hopefully we'll do that and carry it with you and listen to it at your convenience. For almost 8 years, I like to continue to remind those that may be just checking in for the first time. The focus has really been the same. It's education and information, so we work really hard to have great guest partnerships, provide content for you, the consumer, to hopefully make you a more wise consumer. Not to be an expert, because Mike and I think we're the experts.
I like to think that.
That's what we tell each other anyway. We get together and we look at each other and say, hey, you're an expert.
Yeah.
Hey, you're an expert. Hey.
Hey, yo.
Speaking of that, it is Wednesday, so it's the two Italian guys talking real estate, and we are back today, and our show today is going to be pricing strategies and then also leveraging properties and leveraging strategies, let's call it as well, because we'll jump into that in the second part of the show. Most of you have been following the show and listening to the podcast. Mike and I have been talking a lot about, and I know I have too in the last several months, about just different strategies and ways that you could leverage your property, another property, in some cases assets, different things to move properties or really make some decisions on some options you may not know that are available to you. So we're going to chat about that too. So the first part of the show, let's talk a little bit about pricing strategies. The reason why is because, yes, the Super Bowl is over, so everybody gets back to work and time to get back to business.
That's right.
That old saying.
Before we go into that,
yeah.
Has it really been 8 years?
Yeah. 2011 I started the radio show.
Wow.
Going on 8 years. It's crazy to think. I think it could be October. Could be 8 years.
Yeah.
But it's hard to believe, huh? When did you start doing the radio show with me?
I
what
think
year?
it was probably at least a year into it, weren't you?
12 or 13?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it wasn't too far after I started.
Yeah, so that was good.
That's amazing, huh?
Yeah, it's gone by quick.
The live radio was fun. I like the live radio.
Yeah, live radio was fun. It leaves this element of, I don't know what the word is, but... You gotta
really be careful. You gotta be on.
You gotta be on your toes.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you get callers, and that was always interesting too.
There's something to that, even like with the Facebook feed, as people watch, that it just makes you be more aware of what you say, what you do, how you look.
Yeah.
Make sure you're,
That's why I'm not picking my nose on the camera right now. But
that's right.
But they always told me I had a face for radio, I guess.
That's perfect. Even more so for podcasting.
Yeah, even more so for podcasting. So, anyways, all
right.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll have to figure out the actual anniversary so we could have a little party and wear some hats and
that's right.
Get some streamers in here and stuff.
Yeah, we'll have to go big on the 10 year too.
Yeah, so, right.
Anyway, so, back to pricing strategies.
Back to pricing strategies. The reason why this is important, and we're going to talk about this, and I think we probably should on and off for the next month or so, because we are jumping back into the market here. The holidays are over. Right or wrong, it's just the way it is. People really, right about this time of the year, even though we've had a lot of rain here in Northern California, they start kind of getting back into gear. Should I list my house? I'm thinking about buying. Really, kids are in school. Holidays are over. There is this time of year that typically really starts to crank it up. And so because of that, we want to hopefully proactively get this information in front of you if you're thinking about selling your home or buying a home or both. We're going to talk about some pricing strategies. So
I actually just remembered this too. Yesterday at our sales meeting, I thought it was really interesting. We're going to talk pricing, but even a lot of our agents that had maybe had listings that were on the market for quite some time had all of a sudden had multiple offers on the property.
That's amazing.
So I think that things are picking up, and the year is kicking into gear, essentially. So it's kind of interesting when you have a property on the market for 80, 100 days, and all of a sudden you have two offers within a day or two of each other. It's kind of odd,
So pricing strategies, we want to talk a little bit about that, get Mike's expertise in it. But also, I guess we want to bounce around a little bit. I'm thinking, as you said that, we also want to kind of warn buyers, right? I mean, a couple months ago, we were really going, hey, buyers, get out there. See, now I'm going to tell you, I told you so. Both of us will. I can't speak for Mike. But I've been on you guys big time over the last 5 or 6 months. Buyers, get out there. It's a great time. And what did I say? Go back and listen to that. And I'm going to pat myself on the back and break my arm here. But seriously, we were talking months ago about we don't know, right? And we still don't know, Mike. But I guess my point is, if we're back in this market where we're seeing multiple offers, 14, 15, 16 offers on properties sometimes, that wasn't the case 4 or 5 months ago.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But now I think we're seeing it on some properties that are priced.
Right.
I don't know if appropriately is the right word, because it probably is underpriced a little bit if they're getting that many offers. Like, I think the example I gave a few weeks ago on a listing I got 13 offers on, we specifically, strategically underpriced it a little bit because we knew it was going to drive it back up to where the market was at for it.
Right.
And it's really important about the pricing thresholds and to understand, well, at least out there for the, I don't know necessarily for the consumer, but out there for the real estate agents, to be able to let their clients know what people set up their searches for. It's really important to understand the pricing structure of how people are looking at property, because that is kind of how you back into pricing.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah, no, good point. So then real quickly on the buyers, even though we're going to talk about pricing strategy, buyers should be aware now that it looks like that $900 to $1 million, maybe $1 million or less or whatever, is really, really heating up again. So buyers, you might want to be prepared to work closer with your agent, your lender, to make sure you're really prepared and what that means and what kind of offer, if you're willing to go and pay more, how competitive do you want to be and how much do you want to go up and all that, because those are good conversations to be had prior to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really competitive in the under $1 million range right now. It's very competitive. So you just got to be aware of that.
So if you're pricing, let's kind of just take a couple of different price points, Mike. If you're pricing something for just a little less than $1 million, is the strategy any different, or what would you do if you think the market's bearing maybe something right under $1 million? In what we're faced with today, sellers listening to this, what kind of strategies, what kind of things would you share with them?
Yeah, I would definitely, a couple of things. One is, you got to, as normal, you got to look at what the comps are, what's the competition look like, the comparable sales, what's been sold the last few months, but the standard, like what an appraiser does, like 3 months, the appraisers go back 3 months, and within a mile radius and all that, that's getting a little bit stale, in my opinion, on how to look at, how to value a property, because the market is changing so fast, and it's different. Like you just said a couple minutes ago, 5, 6 months ago is different than it was now.
Right.
So you can't really even use old comps. Really, the best comps nowadays are pending sales, because that is going to tell you what just happened. And if you can get the actual information as to what's going on with that contract and where it's going to close at, those are the real comps, not the house down the street that sold 3 months ago. Yeah, it's a good data point, but it's not the end-all, be-all, because things are changing so rapidly, basically. I know I just went on a tangent on that, but so we talk about the comps. Then a really interesting tool that I've been really all about the last few years is this test the market tool I have access to, where it's a program that a lot of the big brokerages use to set up searches for their buyers. So therefore, there's a lot of information on buyers. Now, it's a sample size of the greater market, but what's really cool about it is that I can look at different price points for a property and see how many buyers I'm losing out on if I price it at a certain number. So, for example, we were talking about this before we came on. I have this new construction listing. I'm going to be the first one to admit it. It's been out there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
New construction takes a little bit longer than regular sales. This is a small little development. It had 4 units. I've sold 3 of them already. The first 3 sold relatively quickly, some within the listing period. This 4th one's been on for 3 months or so. We came out at a weird time. It's the less desirable floor plan and place in location in the complex, and people have just liked the other units. So now we're looking at adjusting the price. And when I looked at the price points, this particular one is listed at almost $1.7 million, and we're offering up some buyer credits and whatever, so it's about a mid 1.6s. But then when looking at the pricing structure, if I were to bring it under $1.6 million, the buyer count versus bringing it under $1.5 million is like an 80 to 100 person difference. Whereas, so like, if I was at $1.650 million right now and I brought it at $1.599, the buyer pool for that was about 80 people. And then if I brought it under the 1.5 threshold, it jumps up to like 180 people.
Got it.
And those are really drastic differences because the 1.5 threshold and the 1 million threshold are the 2 biggest thresholds. Yeah. But I'm just giving you that example because it's really important to kind of analyze those thresholds when you're pricing, especially for like the million one. If you have a property that you think is, based on the data, is worth $1,018,000, you'd be stupid to list it at $1,018,000. I'm going to put it out there right now. If you're going to do that, that's a dumb move. Yeah. Get it under $999 and go from there, because the eyeballs you're going to have on it is just going to be so much greater. And it's all about getting the most exposure to a property as possible to get you the highest and best price.
Got it. Now, let's stay on the sell side for a little bit still on the listing, I should say. So do you always, when you meet with your clients and you guys decide to put a home on the market, do you always strategically put it on in advance and say coming soon with a sign? Is that just kind of a standard practice?
Yeah, I have like a whole pre-market plan and on-market plan, essentially. So yeah, one of those is getting a sign out there and getting some traffic. And
what is a typical time frame, or does it vary, or does it depend on the customer or the client? What is the typical time frame you would put a sign that says coming soon? Week, 2 weeks, month?
2 weeks to a month would be preferred. But I've had new construction. I've had a sign out there for the whole building, the whole time the building, or 6 months, you know.
Coming soon.
Yeah, coming
2020.
soon. Yeah, exactly. But no, I would say for the standard tract home or, house in a regular neighborhood, it's, 2 weeks up to a month. And it depends on the client, too. I mean, ultimately, that's the answer is it depends on how long they want to have it, but my suggestion would be a couple of weeks at minimum.
Okay. So on the listing, we get it on the market. That's about the price. Make sure you price it appropriately. What other things, I know what happens, Mike, when you meet with these people, there's all kinds of ways to market the house now. But let's face it, I mean, technology's changed. A lot of people, there's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah.
Do you think there's still a value to putting a listing in the newspapers these days, for instance? I mean, it's kind of weird. I don't, maybe because I don't subscribe anymore to newspapers. I know maybe older people do still. Some people say I just need to touch that paper and read the magazines or whatever. What is your advice when someone says, should I put this in a magazine or Saratoga or Las Gatas? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it depends on the community that you're a part of. I mean, I personally, like where we live, I think for higher end properties, it makes sense sometimes. I think the luxury property, oftentimes, that's kind of a market for it. Like in Las Gatas, within the last year, I put a couple of properties in there, or Willow Glen is another one. In that community, a lot of people read The Resident. I mean, it's a very popular newspaper. They all get it at their doorstep every week or whatever. So I think it depends on the community, depends on the price point. But overall, for the most part, the answer to your question is it's not really worth it. I think there's so many other avenues of advertising now that we have to focus on. And it's got to be a multi-pronged attack. You can't just focus on one avenue, which is like internet advertising. You have to do multiple things: print, internet. And when I say print, not just newspapers, I'm talking about mailers and door drops and all that stuff. And then there's cold calling campaigns, there's social media, there's all sorts of things. You have to really attack it as a multi-pronged attack. But anyways, that was like a really long answer to your question. But basically, yes and no is the answer to your question. I think it depends on the property and the neighborhood.
Got it.
But overall, am I going to take out a full-page ad in the Mercury News? No.
Yeah, right.
No. Really, the Mercury is focused on new construction. It's the best place on the weekend to go look where all the new developments are. But other than that, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah. So do you think price point, we just talked about right about $1 million, seems to be really heating up, and I'm seeing that working with several clients and in transactions right now. What would you say if we take a move up north to about 1.5? What's your kind of thought on that price point right now?
Yeah, I think all the activity is really falling in the 1 to 1.5 range. I mean, our median price just came out today, I think is $1,198,000 in Santa Clara County. So we're right in that range, under $1 million. 1.2, and this is, again, we have people listening all over the country, but 1.2, 1.25 is like, not entry level, but basically
first-time home buyer.
First-time home buyer territory.
No, so you have a bigger pool of buyers. I mean, because my guess is, and you know this too, is, one of the reasons that's, you have all the first-time home buyers, and then the regular buyers, right? But then when you get maybe 1.5 and higher, most likely, for the most part, you eliminate or lessen that pool because now you're talking about move-up buyers.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a correct assessment.
Right in that range.
Yeah.
And what about the higher-end homes in general, both from pricing but also talk about the market right now? Where would you say that there's this threshold or break point where once you get to $2.5 million, $3 million, it really becomes a whole different clientele market? Where is that in these days?
I think it's probably the 2.5 to 3 and above is roughly the range where it kind of starts. There's a different pool of people and income levels and all of that, and that's probably about where it is.
Right. Speaking of pricing strategies, and we should probably start talking about this in just a couple minutes, because one of the things that's interesting is you hear a lot and you read articles. I study this stuff every day. I know you do too. But, people's hesitation, Mike. I've been in this house 20, 25, 30 years, well, even 10 years, right? Because we've had a run-up recently.
That's the new average, really.
And they're thinking, and I know this is happening. We don't know the numbers, but they're large. They're thinking, God, I'd love to do a move-up buy. I'd love to do that. I want, but I just don't know. What's going to happen in the market. I don't know. I don't really want to sell my house before I buy a house. Here's the other one that I hear a lot too, and it doesn't, I wouldn't say it necessarily is a big deal, but it is a big deal. It gets people thinking. Someone that a couple of years ago, at the time, they really enjoyed their house and they didn't anticipate moving, but that changes for all of us.
Yeah.
And they have this 3.25% or 3.5% fixed interest rate for 30 years. Yeah. And they're thinking, good man, to get rid of this thing, right? So I know there's all those, I guess my point is there's all these dynamics going on.
Yeah.
And so what I want to talk a little bit about now is, what types of strategies, let's talk about some strategies. The leverage strategy we discussed before.
Yeah, no, tell me about that.
We'll get into some detail. And I think the reason this is important is that Mike and I have talked about this before, but you will hear more and more. So I have to apologize in advance if some people are listening to the podcast and they're thinking, come on, another leverage conversation. But the reason why is that it's fairly new in the way it's thinking the product's available. It's not new in, the discussion. People have known about leverage for years. But what's new in this marketplace is there's very few loan officers, very few investors that will allow you to do what's called a cross-collateral financing or bridge financing or pledged financing, things that we've talked about before that are unique and different than most of you would think. You'd be surprised that Mike and I have talked about it before. It's really the 90-10 rule in our business, right?
Yeah.
About 10% of us treat our business like a business. The rest of the 90% just don't.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up and why it's relevant is that you could guess that if you talk to an average of 10 real estate agents or an average of 10 lenders, I'll bet you that maybe one or two of them are going to have any kind of educated idea about what we're talking about right now. I mean, it's not to judge or not, but it's true, right?
Yeah, no, it is true. But we got to know about this stuff. That's why we talk about it. That's why we educate and inform, because you need to look at all the options, really. And it's an option, too, I think, has become more popular because there's actually equity out there.
Yeah, right. That's true.
And
couldn't do it in 2008.
No. And people are house rich and cash poor.
Right.
And so this is a good opportunity for them.
So let's just give some examples real quickly. We won't go into major detail because it depends on everybody's situation. But so if you're let's just say an example of a move-up buyer. Let's do that one first. Let's say someone's got a home that's worth roughly $1 million and they owe very little, maybe $100,000 or $200,000 on it, and they're going to buy a home for 1.5. This is kind of like we talked about, move-up buyer, right? But again, in the selling position, they're thinking, gosh, the market's kind of funny, although I want to be in position to buy a house and I want to be able to put a non-contingent offer in, so what do I do? Again, most people would say, well, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to sell your house before you buy a house, or you hope someone accepts a contingent offer. So what we're saying is that there's other options. In this situation, depending on your income, there's enough equity in that home they currently have, Mike, for $1 million. There's roughly, let's call it, $850,000 in equity.
Yeah. So
in essence, what the investor does is really uses that equity in the home as kind of almost like a temporary down payment, if you will. So if you have 10% down and you're thinking, gosh, I really need 30% down to buy this house, in essence, what we could do is use equity from that exiting property and then leverage that purchase and get that purchase potentially without selling their home. It becomes a temporary loan. And then,
how long is that for again? 6 months.
Yeah. You could get out of it sooner, but I always tell people 6 months, and it goes pretty fast. And a lot of times, people are surprised by the time they buy their house, get settled in, maybe do some work, and then get their house ready to sell, and it takes 60 days. It goes quite quick. No,
it goes by really fast. Absolutely.
So the other one that's happening a lot now, and I'll tell you about the scenario. There's two of them that are going to come into our deal here soon. I've taken the application on both. So one of them, I think I was telling you, one in Los Altos for 3.2.
Yeah.
And they're downsizing. So this is the other part.
They're downsizing?
Yeah, to 1.5.
Oh, there you go.
This is funny.
That's good.
So now we need to look at it. That's kind of interesting. You wonder what the market is for that, right? The downsizing.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up, too, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, is that this is happening a lot, too. Believe it or not, people... And it's not the 3.2 down to the 1.5. A lot of times it's the 1 million down to the 6, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But, so this could take place for the cross-financing also. For this client, they don't have to put anything down. They have so much equity in their existing home that we could do 100% financing. So we're going to loan them $1.5 million on this program. They don't need to liquidate any money. They don't need to take any money from their savings, their retirement, their investments, anything like that. And basically, you're using that leverage in your property for the equity. Just helped another client that sold their house, or not sold, their house here was worth about $1 million. She did own it free and clear, and then she relocated and downsized down to Morgan Hill for about, I think it was $780 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that was another 100% financing.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, I think, because it's really, no matter how good of an agent you have and how good of a team you've surrounded yourself with and how prepared you are with selling and buying a house, the whole sale contingency thing is a very, it's a stressful and difficult process. Yeah. I mean, again, it can be, it can be smooth, but what I'm saying is that no matter all of that, having to sell your home to buy something and going through that whole thing, it's not easy. Yeah. It's really not easy. I mean, so this is a great option to kind of avoid that.
Yeah, it really isn't. And so the message we want to get across today, and again, what I'll always say, I try to say anyway, if you're listening to this podcast, most of the time, or sometime you might be listening to it, and it's an interesting topic, but you're thinking it really doesn't apply to me. But keep this in mind if you have a friend, coworker, family member, anything that you're in the midst of conversation with, and they're struggling with, God, I really like to move up, I'd really like to downsize, I'd really like to do this or that. Keep that in mind, too, and pass this along to them or have them contact Mike and I with any questions of this. I always say what I hate to see the most, not the most, but one of the things that's frustrating to me in this business is when people don't look at all their options before they make that big decision. And these are big decisions.
Yeah.
These are big decisions.
Yeah, don't make any rash decisions.
No. I mean, I try to get as much information as I can to people on a regular basis. And this is the fun part about this show for us, for Mike and I, because that's what we feel like we're doing. We're hoping we're educating you, not to become an expert, but just to know enough to go, gee, I wonder if there's an opportunity or who I should call or what's the best team or what's the best strategy, those types of things. So the last thing I'll say about this kind of leverage opportunity is a lot of people don't know, too, and it's unique, is you could leverage assets without liquidating. So you've heard me talk about this before. Why is this important? It's because let's say that you have, and this happens too, let's say you have a home that you have very little equity in, or maybe not enough equity to do one of these cross deals, but you have a couple $1 million in an investment account. You know, the investors that we work with, Mike, could actually look at your investments, and again, you don't have to draw money, take it out, liquidate it. You do have to sign a contract that says you're basically leveraging against those, and you have to keep them there, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that, again, this is another way. If someone owns a home and they're trying to buy a home without selling their home, but the cross equity doesn't work.
Yeah, on the real estate.
Another question, thank you, on the real estate. Another question is, tell me about your investments or your assets, because we might be able to do something there.
What if they have like a nice yacht or something like that? Can they cross?
That's actually not a bad idea. I didn't think about the yacht. They can cross commercial and residential. I'm glad you brought up not the yacht, but a reminder that you can cross other properties.
Well, this has been something that my understanding, has happened a lot for a long time in commercial and development. This is not something that uncommon in the commercial arena. Right. So for it to be becoming more prevalent in the residential, that's kind of the news that we're talking about.
Right, that's true. So again, I want to remind you all too, it doesn't have to be your primary residence to leverage equity. And I gave an example yesterday, which I thought was going to be a show and wasn't. It's another story. But anyway.
He's still upset about it.
But I don't hang on to things. But what it is that I helped a client just recently, didn't have enough equity in his primary residence, but he had a condo owned free and clear in San Francisco for $2.5 million, and we leveraged that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's that type of thing you could do. And these conversations that we have and these examples, I know we don't go really, really deep because we could lose you by going too deep. It's not that they're too terribly complicated, but really the objective here in these podcasts is to get you thinking and let you know that there's other options. And then if you want to go deeper or go into more detail, then that's where you contact Mike or I and figure out how we could help you. But again, so before we close out, if any of you, if you're listening to the podcast, if it's not yourself, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a family member, a friend, it doesn't really matter. Let them know if it comes up in a conversation that there's a lot of different things that we could help people with, but I think it would surprise some of them. It
would. So, just have the conversation.
Yeah.
It's not too hard.
Have them.
We're not scary.
We're not at all. All right, before we go, Mike, if anyone's thinking about listing their home or maybe buying a home, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, MikeDsells.com, or you can call me 408-630-0101.
And as always, most of you, I hope, know how to reach me by now. The website, RERL-1605-Live.com, or during the week or at any time, I do get texts and calls, and that's fine. That's 408-838-9060. If you have any questions at all. And remember, too, Mike and I have shared this before, if you're working with someone else, understand that we're here as a resource. I like to throw that out, too, because that's the way we operate. We're not going to try to steal you from another realtor or a lender, but if you do reach out and you say, hey, listen, I'm just trying to get a second opinion, Mike or Joe, or what do you think about this? We're going to tell you honestly, and give you the truth and let you know exactly, what your options may be.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks again for checking in. Thanks again for downloading, hopefully listening to the podcast. This is Joe Kuchera alongside Mike D'Ambrosio. Have a great afternoon. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.